Excuse me, holy moly, I don't know what that was about, but good day, everybody. We are live, coming to you obviously from the wonderful Pinnacle Studios. We had a little hiccup, but we are back after, we're just a week late, so
a week late.
Hopefully people weren't missing us too bad. But we are back nonetheless, and we are here with a new edition of Reaching the Pinnacle. Something that I think as you mentioned, as you mentioned before we got on, it's not like we were talking and the sound was out or anything, but we were talking a little earlier, and you'd mentioned that we might have touched on this a few times in the past, but not necessarily really dug into it. So I think it's a good idea that we dig into it, and that's longevity. Being able to stay active. I mean, let's face it. There's a point in time where we gotta maybe hang up the posing trunks and the 45-pound plates and just think about being active. I mean, I won't ever, but
yeah, we can go that far, or even I'd like to maybe discuss this topic as far as longevity, but still being able to train.
Oh, okay, cool.
At a decent level, but maybe how to alter your training, so to speak, as you have either been in the gym training for many years straight, or start kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit. And if you're a newer gym goer, within maybe a couple of years or something like that, being in the gym, how to start thinking ahead on how to change training styles in order to remain more injury-free and continue to train longer.
Sure.
Longer as in potentially 20, 30, 40 years of training. We're not talking about
like a 6-hour marathon session.
No. So,
well, sure.
But that would obviously lead into, hope at some point maybe backing off of even some of the things that you would do.
Right.
But
well, and is there a certain age you cap it off? Are there signs? Is it something like, I've been getting hurt a lot lately, or I've been feeling, how do you know when to maybe start pulling back?
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to go into here. When people come into the gym early on, when they're late teens, early 20s, everybody, of course, is very enthusiastic. And for all the people out there, usually guys, but there's women too, who are just, they want to build muscle. They usually do a lot of deadlifting every workout first. They do a lot of compound movements first in a workout, basically. Right. Deadlift, shoulder presses, bench presses, squats.
Right.
That's usually the very first thing they do in a routine, as heavy as they can for usually moderate reps. Because everybody tells them, you got to go, this is kind of the most direct way to build muscle, move more weight, compound movements, and then they kind of finish up their workout with maybe some
auxiliary stuff.
Yeah, auxiliary isolation type arm curls and leg extensions and stuff like that.
Thinking back to when I got my start, I think I was probably, 13 when I first started training with weights, and I remember seeing I wanted bigger arms, and so I went in there and trained. How do I get bigger arms? And every workout that I happened to see in like Flex Magazine or Muscle Magazine, Ironman International, or all those things, a lot of those basic cookie cutter style workouts that they prescribe in those magazines generally all start with a big compound movement. So I think that's how a lot of us learn.
Well, it's true, and it is effective, but the problem is, as we get older and as we get more miles, so to speak, on your body, and as you get stronger, for that matter, you put more stress on your body. And so it's a mistake, essentially, probably, to go into the gym year after year, always coming in and doing these compound movements, these big, heavy movements, right out of the gate every time. A better strategy may be to take some of those compound movements, your bench press or your deadlift or your squat, and put those second or third in your routine.
Right.
And that way, you're a lot more warmed up. So you're going to put it like an isolation exercise. Like, let's say you're doing legs. Instead of going right to the squat rack, you want to go and do 3 or 4 sets of really hard leg extensions. We're not talking about just warming up. We're talking about actually working sets.
Yeah, get into...
You're pushing them.
Yeah.
Really getting a good pump in there, getting a lot of fatigue, a lot of blood flowing so that your connective tissues and everything is really ready to go.
Right.
And usually I actually do that with lying leg curls and leg curls first. We do hamstrings first almost every time. But and then go into your heavy leg press or your heavy, barbell squat or what have you. Same thing like if you're training chest. Instead of going right to the bench press or the incline press and going heavy with the barbell for sets of 6 right out of the gates, why don't you go in there and do maybe some kind of machine work first? Mm-hmm. It can still be somewhat of a compound movement on a machine, but maybe do something a little safer to let everything get warmed up. And that doesn't mean you're just going and playing around on those things. You're actually doing hard sets on them on a machine or on maybe a fly or something like that. Flies may not be the best thing to start with, but I think you get my idea. And then you go into an incline bench press or a decline or something like that, heavy.
Now, is that
relatively heavy compared to actually 6 reps or whatever you're doing there with a bar?
Is that something? There's a weed or a term called pre-exhaustion. Is that a form of pre-exhaustion, or is that just literally just rearranging?
Well,
your
those are
order
just
of
terms
operation?
And just calling things whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
I actually I refer to it as that sometimes when we're training. But again, that's just a term. I don't know. It's kind of depending on what you're trying to get out of it.
Sure.
You could call it something completely. It's basically a safety measure.
Right. Yeah.
But no, there is a technique where it's specifically designed. It's not always for safety in that case, like the Weider principle. It's more of a stimulation thing. Like, hey, let's really exhaust this particular muscle group with isolation exercise usually, and then go into compound movement so you can basically push that muscle a little farther.
Right.
With that, it's an intensity technique basically.
So, are there a group of exercises that you would recommend? I don't want to say burying in your workout, but just maybe to
kind of get rid of and don't focus on. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, to not just to kind of to take the emphasis off of.
This basically these big compound movements is what I'm saying. As you get older, or if you've been, you may not be that old. You may be, I'm 33,
old in gym years,
and I've been training for 17 years, and so I'm already doing a lot of this stuff, and I have been for a number of years because it came out because of necessity. I started figuring out, after 15 years in the gym, doing deadlift every day, not every back, you just start feeling the effects of that, and so you have to start saying, okay, due to some injuries, some nagging little aches and pains, you have to find another route, so to speak, to get to the same destination.
Right.
But you were asking about discarding something. No, I don't think you have to discard something completely or just completely hardly ever use it.
Sure.
It's just the order in which you use it. It's the way. And so I would say, like, for example, if you're training chest, maybe say you do 4 chest workouts a month, for example. Maybe 3 of those you do, like I said, something like we're talking about where you put that bench press movement second or third in your rotation.
Sure.
But maybe one of those you do go in the gym, and maybe you go heavy on the bench press 1 time a month. Doesn't mean you're not using the bench press.
Right.
It's just using it in a different position in the workout, different in the rotation.
So let me ask you this. Would you ever recommend maybe taking some of those big compound movements where people tend to, even unintentionally sometimes, maybe even tend to go heavy, like a squat or a bench press. Would you ever cycle those as, like, maybe 1 week not even do them?
Yeah, I definitely recommend that. I would say, like, there's no exact answer to it. I mean, there's no formula really, but I would say like a heavy bench press or something like that, even if you're doing it second or third in your rotation, so to speak, and of your exercises of that day, I would only probably do that maybe once a month or so, once every 3 or 4 workouts, 5 workouts. I mean, you can substitute other compound movements. I mean, you don't have to do flat barbell bench press every workout. You can do incline barbell or decline barbell.
Sure.
Or you can even go to the dumbbells, which you can still, get pretty heavy on dumbbell presses too.
Well, So let me ask you this. This might take us down a tangent. Everybody, listeners out there,
Uh-oh.
you know how good we are at this.
Don't get me started. It's Labor Day weekend.
I know. So yeah, the next thing you know, 3 hours has gone by. So let me ask you this: I grew up again, through the 90s and 2000s and now
80s.
I guess the 80s. Well, I mean, my weightlifting, was early 90s up till now, and I was always kind of raised as a young, impressionable football player, bodybuilder, powerlifter, whatever. Machines just aren't simply as good for pressing or for building mass or just not as good. So would you be taken away from your workout if maybe you substitute one day a bench press for like a seated machine press?
Not at all.
No?
No. It's not a tangent. I won't go off on it. It's just ridiculous. It's just an old myth, basically, that machines can't build muscle. It's just the only thing that determines muscle growth is basically stress.
Right.
Stress of the exercise and intensity of the exercise, taking your body to a point that it's not comfortable with or used to.
Yeah.
That's basically the formula.
Sure.
So whether that's on a bar, on a dumbbell, on a machine, on a lifting rocks outside the gym.
Right.
It doesn't matter where the stress comes from. It's just that the stress is
right.
put on there.
And speaking of safety, I mean, I think machines tend to be a little safer. I mean,
They can be.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're still lifting, so there's an element of danger, but...
Yeah, the machines, I do feel they're probably a little safer, so to speak, but there are certain machines for certain individuals that just due to the design of the machine, the mechanics and how the movement of the machine, that just doesn't fit well with your particular body structure, so to speak. And some of those can actually, they might be more dangerous than a free weight exercise.
Sure.
In a free weight exercise, you can move in a pathway that your body feels comfortable with. Right. So if you get on a machine and you're like, something's just not right, then that machine's probably something for you to avoid or try to adjust it or something like that. But I would say as a whole, though, yeah, you're probably a little better off on a machine as far as safety, less chance of tearing a muscle probably or getting a joint problem.
Right.
But yeah, they can build muscle. Really, I mean, I would use a combination of machines and free weights and cables.
Well, and I was just going to touch on that, especially for those of us that are in that aging demographic, or have been in things for a long time, or even a beginner. I guess for everybody, this is for everybody.
It is because as soon as you learn these things, you can start implementing them earlier and probably have less problems with joints aching and whatever all the things that people get when you've been working out for.
Right. Well, and honestly, going back to what you said about mixing it up, I'd like to encourage people to not fall too much in love with machines either, because you're in a fixed plane of motion, A, and B. In some cases, you're not. I mean, like a seated bench press, you're not using any stabilizers. So, as we get older, those stabilizing muscles are very important for posture and joints and just moving around. So I think combination is very, very beneficial.
Don't limit yourself. I mean, unless you have something, an injury or something, or don't limit yourself though unless you have to.
Right. So what do you think about as it pertains to? And I know we've touched on this frequency wise.
Yeah.
Following the FIT principle.
Right. Well, again, when you're trying to build muscle, if that's your primary kind of objective, I would say the more advanced you are, the bigger you are, the stronger you are, the less you train frequency-wise.
Sure.
So, if you're really advanced, I mean, let's just say if you're a beginner coming into the gym day one, first 2 or 3 years of training, you can probably go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and probably make a lot of progress. Just because your body can recover from the stress of that, because it's not as much stress as if you were carrying another 50 or 100 pounds of muscle or something like that. So, but if you've been training for 5 or 10 years, you better not go